Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode number 2 of the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series. Alongside my man, Kevin Connelly, I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot thank you enough for tuning in to the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Networks. Alongside my man, Kevin Connelly. Kevin, we cannot thank you enough for joining me here on episode number 2 of my newest project, the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series. Kevin, how is your quarantining going right now, and how's the family?
Everyone's good, Joe. Hope same was with yours. Thanks for having me. Um, some schoolwork here and there, a lot of video games, a lot of sleeping. Just your standard 21-year-old quarantine, I think.
Yeah, and not only that too, but you gotta say, and I think for the viewers out there wondering, Kevin, the hair, oh my goodness, and that is something, buddy.
The hair's a lot, Joey. Just for you, I shaved the other day. That was that
Oh,
was get
thank you.
that was getting a little long. But the hair, haven't gotten it cut since I think the middle of February. My plan was to get a cut before Championship Saturday, the Big East tournament.
Yeah,
I was,
yeah.
I was that was my plan, to get it that morning. And obviously that went out the window.
Right.
So it's funny. I ordered a couple of headbands. They came in today.
Okay.
Like those athletic headbands you see like middle linebackers wearing.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I got two of those just because. What else are you gonna do during quarantine?
It's true.
And
Well, you got to,
well, yeah,
you got. I was
we'll
gonna
see
say
how long it goes.
you got to take full advantage of Amazon Prime and just
Yeah,
drain whatever pennies you got left, right?
yeah, exactly,
Oh
exactly.
man,
So yeah, we'll
that's
see.
that's unbelievable. But for those who are just joining us here, and for those who watched the previous episode with former Siena Saints midfielder Connor McGlynn and current Hartford Athletic USL Championship midfielder Connor McGlynn, this series is going to be about interviewing multiple people that I know, that I have come in contact with during my time in the sports industry, and also friends that I've made along the way. And I can say with all my heart, Kevin is a dear friend of mine, and one of the guys that I have gotten to know within the St. John's University radio network, WSJU, The Voice. And Kevin, I'm beyond grateful. As you know, you were my M board, both myself and Mike Slavitt's M board, when we were sports directors just 2 years ago. But I want to get to the history of Kevin Connelly and who Kevin Connelly is and why he wanted to become a sports broadcaster or even just work in the sports industry.
Well, Joey, I mean, as a kid, you love sports growing up. You love sports growing up. I played every which sport possible. I think, I don't know if I'll just speak for myself. Obviously, I can't speak for all the other people that have played sports out there. But for me, it was baseball and basketball. And I was geared more towards baseball just because I was better at it. And once I realized, I don't know, 12, 13, 14 years old, somewhere around there, that I wasn't going to be the next Derek Jeter, that I wasn't going to hit 50 home runs for the Yankees. I was like, all right, what's the next best way to get into sports and sports broadcasting? So ever since then, ever since I realized I wasn't going to be the next Derek Jeter, I've been geared on sports broadcasting, sports media, sports writing, something in sports. And that's what I've been going for ever since.
I love to hear it, and it's very funny because you and I have a very similar, um, a very similar, almost actually ideal, or actually, let's, you know what, we're gonna call it the same thing. A realization that we had many years ago, that we both stink at sports, and really, we make a living with our voice. We make a living, doing what we love. And if you can't play, if you can't hit 40 home runs, if you can't even hit the freaking baseball, or even dribble a basketball, whatever it is, this is the next best thing. And you've really done an amazing job thus far. And you've been a part of you've been a part of the squad for 3 years now. It's crazy how quick time has gone, Kevin.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, that's the crazy thing. Well, I was supposed to be graduating uh, St. John's this year. Well, I guess I'm still graduating, just no ceremony.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna say, yeah, you're still
yeah,
gonna get
still,
that diploma.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's just wild. In high school, I went to St. Peter's Prep in Jersey City, and I thought there was no 4 years that could have went faster, could have gone faster than that. And then I stepped into St. John's, and it just feels like yesterday I moved in freshman year, and now I'm waiting for an email to be allowed to go back and get the rest of my stuff, which is besides the point. But I mean, even if coronavirus and all this hadn't happened, I'd still have a month left of college. And I mean, it's bizarre how fast it went. Wish it would have slowed down a little bit. Maybe wish I had some more time there because I felt like we were really just getting off the ground in terms of WSJU. But hey, it'll be carried on in the future by younger students, and it'll keep going on there. And we'll see what happens. But it's been great so far.
Yeah, and you said it, and you said it perfectly. It's going to be carried on by younger students, and from the legacy that um, the guys like Jaden Daly, John Perez, have left, and then basically when it went down to nothing, and both Mike and myself, we picked it back up, and then we wanted to make sure that we had guys that we could trust to carry on that tradition that both, or the new foundation that both of us built, and now to see you, Brendan Myers, and Anthony Tornatori, you guys took the bull by the horn and absolutely knocked it out of the park. And we were together on your last broadcast for your last collegiate broadcast. And I know, speaking about that, we've spoken multiple times ever since March 12th, and that day will live on for, I could tell you, for the rest of my life, and I'm sure it will for yours too, because I know May 25th, 2018 was the last time that I would ever call a game for my college alma mater. And it's, it stinks because I know for you've put your heart, and your heart's on your sleeve every single time. You know exactly what you're doing. You've wanted to do it your entire life. And ever since you've gotten here, and ever since we gave you that position, you took you just took strides and just kept going, moving forward. Now, my question to you is you found out about WSJU, and how do you believe, well, first off, who got you into WSJU first off?
At first, it was Anthony Tonator because we had a class together.
Really?
Yeah, and we didn't
Huh.
we didn't we didn't really know each other. I think it was towards the end of freshman year, maybe. And yeah, we didn't really know each other, and we just got to talking. Um, and he brought it up to me, and that's when I went up there and found out what it was all about. And then I met you and Mike Slavitt, and really the rest has been history.
Yeah, no, it's been, and really I remember, because I know that obviously you and Brendan are friends, and I remember when I first met him, he said, "Listen, we have this guy, a friend of mine, Kevin, and he's really good." He's like, "Trust me, he's really good." And I said, "Absolutely, bring it in, and or bring him in, because um you know we're this is on my network. I can say this, but the people that we had at WSJU were, let's keep it PG and just say terrible, to say the least. And really what you guys have done to carry on the, again, to, and I'm not going to be repetitive here, but just to carry on the tradition, and to make the environment less toxic, and to make it a place where your fellow students want to learn. And that's the biggest thing too that people need to recognize. And I think for the viewers out there that are not only know us, but even some of the younger guys, I saw that they were interacting with us on Twitter, both you and myself. And those guys are either going to be a part of it, or are already a part of it, and I know for a fact that they're going to be benefiting and taking over what both of us have left behind. Now, WSJU obviously it has a long history. And one of the facts that I found out not too long ago, and I think I don't know if it was you and I or someone else, but I didn't know that the legendary, and I say that very, I don't even know why I said legendary, but I'll say it again. The legendary WFAN talk show host Mike Francesa many years ago was the sports director of our station. So it
Hmm.
just shows that, you know what, there is a potential for us to move forward. Where do you think that you could go with this and just to have WSJU on your resume?
Yeah, see, Joey, I mean, that's the biggest thing. Um, we need WSJU to continue to push forward. Um, because when you look at other notable radio stations, at college radio stations at schools like Fordham, Syracuse, Seton Hall, they have people that are high up in the sports media business. And it seems like a lot of their alums are those first ones to get the job out of college. And you don't really see that with WSU, even though we have the sports pope, who was one of our former sports directors. So it's just important that the legacy of WSU continues to be pushed forward and to live on, and to just see it continue to build. So when you go to that interview and they see WSU, oh, I know that's St. John Student Radio. I know they do really good work. Let me give this application a better look.
Right. And exactly like I said, you hit the nail right on the head with that, because I could tell you with me being at St. Francis, I love where I am. It's just, you know, there's that wasn't the route that I expected to go down, was to be an SID. And is that something, and not only that too, actually, I'll give the viewers a little story. When we were driving back, both Mike and myself, from Cincinnati, long story, but Cincinnati with the Big East baseball tournament in 2018. A fellow actually the sports director for Seton Hall at the time, he was a senior. He told me that he didn't really have the ambition to go into SID work. And now he's a graduate assistant. I don't know where, I believe someplace in, I think, Washington or Maryland, somewhere in the DMV area. But would that be I don't know, a path or a road that you would go down, Kevin, if God forbid, and especially now because of this pandemic, jobs will be lacking. It's going to be very far and few between because of some athletic programs. It'll be similar to even retail almost. Some stores can't open up and may not ever be able to open up again. Um, you're going to see cuts in athletic programs, and they already said also with the NCAA is that usually 700 million is divided into 347 different ways, and now it's going to be about, I think it's around 230 million. So that's in the hundreds of thousands per Division One institution. So for you now, and especially because you said it, to have WSJU have the legacy keep moving forward, or the tradition, or the positive trajectory to continue onward, what is your outlook, and how do you approach your next phase in life following graduation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this virus has thrown a wrench into anyone's plans, whoever had any to begin with. Being an I mean, in terms of being an SID or anything, I think I know what my biggest goal is, and that's being a broadcaster, whether it be for a team, a network, so on and so forth. But I won't stick my nose up at any opportunity I have to get into sports, because you have to start somewhere. Um, but it's kind of just a wait and see, because especially for people who are in the sports media industry, aspiring to be in the sports media industry, no one knows when sports are going to be back, and that's one of the scariest things, I guess. I mean, you see a bunch of people from different outlets and organizations being laid off. And as someone coming out of college, you're like, all right, well, you see person X has 20 years in the industry, and you're just coming out of college. Who do you think they're going to hire first? Person X. So
Right.
it's a lot of uncertainty, but you just hope everything happens for a reason, and you hope it all works itself out as long as you just keep working and keep your pedal to the metal.
Right, and exactly what you said, that it's, keep the pedal to the metal, and we know the ability that you have, to keep moving forward and to eventually get the job, of your dreams. But speaking about dreams, where a lot of basketball players go to fulfill those dreams in Duke University, and you write for a fan-sided, blog, called Ball Durham. When on March 12th again, and I hate to keep bringing up that date because, and this is a horrible comparison, but really, if you think about it, um, it is. And a lot of people think of, September 11th, and a lot of people died then. Um, as we know, we were young, but here, that day will live on as the day that the pandemic was officially named a novel coronavirus pandemic, everything, where everything came to a standing, to a screeching halt. And for you, I remember that day. There was we were going to be on the call for the Butler Providence game, the 5-4, um, at Madison Square Garden, and I remember you had said, "Well, I got to write for Ball Durham," and you have a lot of experience with them. They are a verified account on Twitter. They have um, a lot of credibility, and you are one of the people to write about it. Talk to me about not only your experience there, up to date, but also how the abrupt ending of everything it threw you a curveball. And how did it affect Ball Durham, and how did it affect you while being employed for them?
So thankfully, I'm still employed with them. I still freelance for them,
Yeah,
and it's
thank
been great.
goodness.
So yeah, so I'll go back to the beginning when it all started. So it was the 2018 season. I think I'm getting that right. It was the Duke team with Marvin Bagley, Wendell Carter, Gary Trent Jr. I think that was the 2018 season. So it was around January, and I saw that this site was um, looking for contributors. So I applied, got accepted, and it turned in unpaid contributor, which was fine. I was just looking somewhere to get my name out there. Um, then, for reasons I still do not know to this day, the former site expert, which is like the editor of the site, was let go, left, whatever happened there. Again, I still don't know that
Yeah.
full story. And all the other contributors left that were also there except for myself. So I sent an email to the head of the college division at Fansided to see if I could apply to be the new site expert. He said I could. I got applied. I applied. I got promoted. And since then, call it February 1st, I was the site expert at Ball Durham. And funny to mention that the first men's college basketball game that I was the site expert for was the Duke St. John's game at Madison Square Garden, where St. John's took down Duke thanks to Shamori Pond's heroics.
Yeah.
Um, but since then, we've continued to grow the site, the page. Couple months, we've surpassed over 1 million views per month. So that's great. I have a great team that works there. Site expert Matt Giles. He's been a great addition. He came on about a year ago. We have tons of fantastic contributors. I mean, the list is too long to name them all. And I mean, it's been really great there. I love it there. It's giving me an opportunity to um, advance my way, hopefully in the field, writing about Duke athletics. I mean, obviously the Big also gives you the chance to write about college football, gives you the chance to write about college baseball, women's basketball, and all other athletics. I mean, even NFL, NBA, because Duke has players in the professional ranks. Yeah, so that's been really great. As to your question about um, that day where all the conference tournaments got canceled, well, I'll even start March 1st. It was a real whirlwind because you had St. John's closing their regular season, Duke closing their regular season, and don't forget I'm a full-time student, so it was a lot on my plate at once.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, a lot of work's going into it. I'm leaning on Matt Giles, other contributors to maybe shoulder my load of the work a little bit because I just had so much going on. So regular season ends. What was that around? Might have been a month ago. Might have been like March 9th, that final Saturday of the regular season. St. John's beat
Yeah.
Marquette at noon in the Garden, and then Duke
Yep.
came back at night and beat Carolina.
March
And
7th.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah, March 7th. And I know I speak for you, speak for basically everyone in the world. There was not a doubt in anyone's mind that there weren't going to be conference tournaments at that point.
Right.
I mean, everyone knew the coronavirus was a thing. It was bad. It wasn't great, but no one in their wildest dreams, I guess, except the Ivy League, because they canceled right around that time,
They did. Yeah.
and everyone was in an uproar.
Yeah.
So no one thought there was going to be no conference tournaments. So that Wednesday, St. John's, Georgetown, what a great game. And I'm preparing for what would be a jam-packed day on Thursday. And I'm sorry for skipping around because the day is still kind of so much of a blur, but you remember what happened, or even like that 48-hour stretch. So, well, we get to Madison Square Garden going back to Wednesday, and you first hear the news of um, the NCAA tournament not having fans, and you're like, oh, because it was building, conference tournaments not allowing fans, NCAA tournament not allowing fans. You're like, all right, we got a problem here. But everything was going to happen as scheduled on Wednesday. We called the game, and after the game, it comes out Rudy Gobert tested positive for virus,
Right.
and you're like, oh boy, this is not going to be good. NBA, 15 minutes later, suspends their season. And games are still going on around the country because there were games scheduled to be played. So it's getting unusual. Then Wednesday night comes and things for whatever reason they just felt like they took a turn for the worse, just in terms of the media coverage of the virus and all that. And you're like, man, do we even go on Thursday? What are we going to do?
Right.
And I speak for, I think, myself and you. I didn't make the decision that I was going to Madison Square Garden on Thursday until about 8 o'clock Thursday morning, after about 3 hours of sleep.
Both
And
of
we
us
go
together, because we had that phone conversation, I think, when the moment we both got up, with just, like I said, a few hours of sleep, but we knew exactly where our heart was. Please continue.
Yeah, so we get there Thursday, and where it's weird because obviously the Big East had already announced there's going to be no fans, and you're like, all right, it's going to be no fans, but I think in the mind of a broadcaster, you feed off the fans' energy, especially in like a neutral site game, but you're more focused on the action on the court. So you're like, all right, I'll just lock in on the court and we'll see what happens. And now we're about at 11:55 a.m. St. John's was tipping at noon. And you start seeing this conference canceled, this conference canceled, this conference canceled. ACC still going to go on. They had a 12:30 tip. Big East still playing. St. John's and Creighton on the floor taking warm-ups. And we're like, all right, we're going to play. We don't know how long we're going to play, but we're going to play. And then right around noon, right before the ball was tipped, we were on the air, and both teams went to their benches. They were on the floor. They were ready to go. Both teams went to their benches. And the first couple things, thoughts went into my mind were, number one, they're canceling it. Number two, all right, maybe they're just doing this for TV. TV needs a little more time FS1 needs more promotion time. And I guess that was it, because they called them back out on the floor. The ball went in the air, and we played the first half, and news continued to come out throughout the 20 minutes, got pulled off the floor. And then obviously they went into halftime, and that was that. And the conference tournament was over. And later in the day, the NCAA tournament was canceled. But just got a little off topic there. But back to your question about Ball Durham and how that has affected me throughout the coronavirus. And it's not great to say, but it honestly helped our viewership. We had the most views Ball Durham has ever had in its existence, March 2020. And I attribute that to the great work myself and my team did. I also think that just because the shock and people were desperate for college basketball and for sports news in general, I think they flocked more. And anytime we put something out and get a lot of views, so it benefited me to an extent, not the way that I wanted to. I wish more people were coming for opinions and game recaps and game previews and NCAA tournament coverage and ACC tournament coverage. But it didn't happen that way. But thank God people continued to come read our page and read our articles. We've hit a little bit of a lull here in April. And I think that's primarily due to the fact that college basketball will be over now. I mean, Monday night would have been the championship game. So I think it's easier for people to push on the back burner. But when you were people, fans, players, coaches, whatever, mentally getting prepared for arguably the best 4 weeks of the college basketball season, best 4 or 5 weeks, people just wanted all the content that they could take in. I mean, you saw people, video games creating March Madness simulations. I mean, they just wanted something about college basketball. And at least for 3 to 5 minutes in reading an article, hopefully we took some people's minds off what's really going on in the world.
Right. Well, that's the biggest thing too, is that, you need some positivity. And the biggest thing, and this is another reason why, that there were these simulations. There were multiple talks. You have multiple people coming out with different podcasts. And also, not only that too, I was actually having a conversation with somebody just earlier in the day, and they asked me if they could interview somebody or how they would go about reaching out to a sports information director and getting someone from Seton Hall on their podcast. And I said, well, I could tell you one thing right now, and that is that people are going to be reaching out to every single school to find somebody to speak with. And especially Seton Hall, for instance, because Miles Powell, the, Naismith player, Naismith finalist, Jerry West Award winner for best shooting guard in the country. But all aside, whoever it is, whether it be Seton Hall, whether it be the St. John's crest that you're wearing on your sweatshirt right now, or anyone in any conference, is that now you're going to have, whether it be April 9th, or I think it's April 9th. I'm all mixed up with my days because every day seems the same, obviously. But whatever day it is, day of the week, day of the month, the year, the week, whatever, people are going to be looking for an outlet just for some positivity, whether it be game shows, whether it is college basketball, sports. And I don't want to get political here, but I will throw in my 2 cents with this. This is why you have a lot of people, and especially with Major League Baseball, Kevin, you hear now the rumblings of, well, we could play in May. We can play in Arizona, but all of the players are going to be basically in isolation. They won't be able to go out of their hotels. Now, I've heard from a few, because I have a few friends on the Chicago, let me rephrase that. A few friends within the Chicago Cubs organization. And from one coach, what one coach told me is that it's going to be, quote, hell. And just to think about that, I feel for both, but then I also feel for the people that look at our content, because we're coming up with stuff, but then you also have people that are retail workers, that are, that are, let's say, masons or whatever, any little trade work there is that right now that's deemed non-essential, and you need something to do. Just today, golf courses were deemed non-essential. And New York's Governor Cuomo actually just signed an executive order because you see flocks of people going to these golf courses. Yes, golf is technically, I would say, considered social distancing, but when that's all you've got, you have to have something as an outlet. And we can only do so many podcasts. We can only put out so much material online, especially for you guys at Ball Durham. And it's not only there, it's everywhere. You need to come up with some content, and it is so hard, especially now. And we are only about 27 days into the official pandemic era, if you will, or whenever it was considered a pandemic. And now is the time, as you said, now people are going to be looking, people are going to be trying to find whatever your website. And I can't believe it. I couldn't believe it with my website. I saw it, and it was almost like a 500% increase. I was like, oh my gosh, it's great, but I don't put up great content. Who are we kidding? You guys put up great content. And I've read some of your stuff, Kevin. Absolutely unbelievable. But I want to throw this question here, and it's not on the piece of paper that we made up together, but I do want to ask you this, because you are now considered Big East alum, St. John's alum, or you will be in a month. I don't want to call you too old yet, but Alex O'Connell, former Duke player, heading over to the Big East and going to be playing for Creighton, not this upcoming year, but 21-22 due to NCAA transfer rules. Now, just a few short years ago, then Duke player Jordan Tucker made the jump to the Big East and to play with guys like Kamar Baldwin, with Henry Badley, and you have guys now that have made that leap from Duke because they don't get that playing time. Tell me a little bit about Alex O'Connell, if you're comfortable with it, and what you think he can bring to a Marcus Zagorowski-led Creighton Blue Jays team.
Well, Joey, I think there's a lot of characteristics to this story.
As the site expert, I just want to say you are now the site expert, so of course I had to just plug that in there for you.
First, I mean, a lot of people on Duke Twitter weren't surprised at this move, and I wasn't one of them. I was very surprised. I mean, you have a person who just finished his junior year going to transfer to another school. There was rumors that, well, maybe he could graduate and become immediately eligible for this next upcoming year as a graduate transfer. Then it was, well, if the new transfer rule gets passed, he could be eligible for this year.
Right.
Just came out yesterday or today that no, his plans are to sit out this year and play next year. And that makes sense because, honestly, how much playing time is he going to get on this Creighton team? Right. Marcus Zagorowski, Tyshawn Alexander, Mitch Ballack.
Yeah.
You have all these players that are going to most likely going to come back for Creighton. And you're like, all right, where does he fit? And Creighton already in these way too early top 25 polls are a top 10 team.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, I mean, he's a great talent, a 3-point shooter, and a freak athlete. People don't give him credit. I mean, he can jump out of the gym with almost anybody. But going back to his transfer from Duke, I was surprised, mainly because he had one season left of eligibility. His father played at Duke, and you just figured he was going to be there his senior year and take on a bigger role. Now, Duke is going to return Joey Baker, and they basically have the same type of skill sets. Joey Baker's a different story. I think one of the few times Mike Krzyzewski has ever basically messed up was burning Joey Baker's red shirt his freshman year last year.
Right.
That I'm still not on board with that. I think that was a mistake, and I think once Joey Baker eventually graduates from Duke, Mike Krzyzewski is going to tell you that was a mistake.
Yeah.
But and then there was obviously uncertainty. Is Cassius Stanley going to return? He's not. He's going to go to the draft. You still have questions about Matthew Hurt, although signs are pointing for him coming back to Duke. And you have another big-time recruiting class coming in, primarily of guards and wings, Jeremy Roach, Jalen Johnson, DJ Stewart. And there's going to be a lot of jam at the shooting guard position, at the wing position for minutes. And so, in that sense, all right, you kind of understand it. But I think Alex O'Connell is going to sit this year, so he'll have 1 year of eligibility in the 2021-2022 season. That'll be his final year of college eligibility. I think you can make the assumption Tyshawn Alexander's not going to be at Creighton. Marcus Zagorowski probably not going to be there, nor Mitch Ballack. So he'll see an increase of minutes. He's a really good shooter, not a good defender. I think you'd put him as a below average defender, but to a Creighton team, learn the system, get acclimated to your surroundings. Think he could be a really good Big East player. It's a shame though he only has 1 year, because we saw Jordan Tucker, who was in a similar situation, because again there was a logjam. I mean, Mike Krzyzewski probably over recruited that year, because that was the year Trevon Duval, Gary
Right.
Trent Jr., Marvin Bagley, Wendell Carter. On that team, you had Grayson Allen.
Yep.
Not a lot of room for Jordan Tucker. And I think Coach K went out and got him, and then he got Marvin Bagley and got Marvin Bagley to reclassify. So I think maybe a little over recruiting went into it. But ultimately, I mean, Jordan Tucker found his way to Butler, declared for the 2020 draft. Don't know about that decision,
Yeah,
or how
that's
well
true.
that's going to work out for him. But hey, you look at it all across college basketball. Players want to get to the professional ranks as fast as possible. So that's Jordan Tucker's story. But Alex O'Connell, sit for a year, think he could be really good in the Big East.
Yeah, I think you're right, and not only that too, but you're also going to see a complete shift in the Big East. Obviously, with UConn coming in, Creighton, Villanova are going to be the top two teams. Obviously, Seton Hall lost Miles Powell. St. John's is just going to get better. Now you also have Arnaldo Toro, George Washington transfer, coming in to play for Mike Anderson. Obviously, two guys that really did not make a difference. Ian Steer, Damian Sears really did not make a difference. There was some internal stuff that was going on. But now I want to get back onto, or actually, well, I don't know if for, again, and I'm sure Kevin, you know this, but for the viewers out there that do not know and follow the Big East, for Xavier, Najee Marshall officially signed with an agent, so he's done. So that's definitely going to continue. We'll see what happens there now with Xavier. So that's going to be a fun team. Where last year, remember, Kevin, Butler, and we were at Big East Media Day together. Butler was selected to finish 8th in the preseason coaches poll, and they absolutely blew everybody away. A top 10 ranking at one point, and then they were pretty consistent throughout the year. But then in Big East season, then they began to fall off a tiny bit. But obviously towards the end with against Xavier, Kamar Baldwin with that game-winning 3, that I remember, I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Really good. But again, getting back onto campus, and with your experience with WSJU, and where in your opinion is the coolest building, whether it be, and I know baseball you didn't really get a lot of time, but with basketball you did, and with your experience with Joe Tartamella's women's team, but also traveling. And that's the biggest thing that was a problem with WSJU was that we couldn't do it. We wouldn't get the funds for it. We had to do it on our own. And I know you guys, and you especially, took the bull by the horn and took out of your own savings. And I can say this over the air because, in my opinion, it is admirable. It is absolutely surreal what Kevin did, to those that are listening out there. And that is a leader. And I don't mean to keep, to keep making Kevin blush, but it is the truth. And in 2 weeks, we're going to have his e-board member, Anthony Tornatore, on. And I'm sure I'm going to say the same exact thing, because those two did absolutely amazing. And we'll have Brendan Myers on at some point as well. And he was a part of that movement as well. But again, sticking to the question, Kevin, your favorite place that you went as an M board member, or just as a WSJU member?
Joey, that's tough. I mean, we've been to a lot of great arenas, like myself, Brendan Myers, Anthony Tonatore. Um, I mean, the trip to Mohegan Sun that me and Brendan took, overall, excuse me, building. I mean, that was fantastic. I mean, everything they have in the Mohegan Sun. I mean, you have a basketball court, a concert hall, all the rest. It's like a mini mall inside a basketball arena. I mean, that's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's so tough. I mean, at Seton Hall, that was the largest crowd they had at the Prudential Center when they played St. John's. I think they topped it a couple weeks later when they played Villanova, but at that
Yep.
point, that was their largest crowd on a Sunday afternoon. When we went up to Providence, that place was absolutely nuts. So I think in terms of just overall building structure, it was Mohegan Sun. I think in terms of uh, crowd atmosphere, it was Providence, although we did have a couple of issues that we ran
Yeah.
into up there.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, just that the vibe that was in the Dunkin' Donuts Center, I think those two might stand above the rest. And I mean, I'm leaving out the iconic Finneran Pavilion. I mean, there's just so, and I'm leaving out Madison Square Garden. I mean, there's just so
Yeah.
many iconic places you get to go at the WSJU. There was points where we had to pay out of our own pocket. This year, we were able to get some funding from the school, so we were grateful for that. I mean, I think one negative, and I think Brendan and Anthony would tell you this too, is that we didn't push more to travel with the women's team. I think that was one thing that if we all had to go back, that's one thing we would definitely one regret we'd all have. I did in my 3-4 years, I did every women's road game at Seton Hall and Walsh Gym. That's fun because I mean, women's games, you're right there. I mean, men's games, they put you a little further away from the court. But I mean,
Right on
I
the
loved it all,
baseline.
and I
Yeah.
think, yeah, exactly. And it was, I loved every part of it. I love the traveling. You just have to love the grind if you want to get into this business. And I mean, with the group that I was lucky to be with at WSU, you, Mike, Brendan, Anthony, our other seniors. I know I'm going to forget some. Brendan Murray, Mike Kelly, Alec Norton, uh, underclassmen, George Whitbread. I mean, it was just a great group we had. And it was a blast, whether it was a car ride to MSG or a car ride to Villanova. Nick Bello, he wasn't even part of WSJU, although he was going to be for the baseball season. But
Right.
I mean, it was all just great. But again, a little tangent there that I like to go on. But in terms of overall building structure, Mohegan Sun, crowd atmosphere, I got to go with the Dunkin' Donuts Center.
Yeah. And you know what? And you say, the tangents that you go off on, Kevin, and in our business, we tell stories. That is what we do. And that is what we were born to do. Um, I can tell you right now, I remember at the Dunkin' Donuts Center when we were on top of, or we were right up against the baseline with the season ticket holders right in front of us. Me, Mike Slavitt, Rodney Harris, really, really great atmosphere. St. John's got annihilated in that game. But I never asked you, did you guys stayed overnight in Providence or no?
We stayed overnight because it was an 8 o'clock game. It was over winter break. But we stayed overnight. So say it was an 8 o'clock game. We left. We went up to Anthony's house. We switched cars and we drove up to
Yeah,
Providence, and then got up there. Say I don't know, 2 o'clock ish. Went
yeah.
something to eat, hung out, and then went to called the game. Stayed overnight, and then next morning came back because we were able to do that also because it was on winter break.
Right.
But yeah, Providence we stayed over, Mohegan Sun we stayed over, and Georgetown we stayed overnight.
Right. Yeah. And I remember and I don't know, and I'm sure, and I think you remember this, and for those that that want to get into this business and that would have to put out some of their funds or their money. No one will ever believe this. And I remember when I think I told you or I told Brendan or someone, and or actually Brendan was our board op then, and I remember I'll never forget it when we were driving up there on, I don't know, it was like a Friday night or something like that, and there was an ice storm, and it was like, no kidding, probably about this big of ice balls or hail. And we got to Providence, and it didn't. And for me, I have never driven in an ice storm before, and I always say, I'm driving in the impossible. I can do it. And my mom tells me that sometimes backseat driver, oh, you got to watch. It's raining, it's snowing, whatever. And I feel confident in everything, but and there was one time, and it was going to Providence for St. John's and Providence, where I did not feel comfortable behind the wheel. And I never said to Rodney, I never said, guys, listen, I don't feel comfortable, but I made sure I stayed on course. And staying on the Connecticut Turnpike the entire time, it was freaky, because when you have hail coming at you and visibility at maybe a quarter mile and you're going 65, it's not good. But then the best part is when you get to the hotel and the hotel tells you that they're closed down. Well, I had a reservation. Well, they had a satellite dish up there that fell down and smashed cars. And apparently windows were being blown in because of the wind, because it was close to like tropical storm winds that, of course, we were there for. And I remember when we moved over to the next hotel, and it was expensive. It was expensive, but there was no other choice. And we were there already. What were we going to do? Go to Boston, drive up north, or drive to Smithfield and where Brian is. And it was far. So, and the reason why I bring up this story is because of the money aspect. And for the people that want to be in the business, and Kevin, you said it, if you want to do this and you enjoy the grind, there will be sacrifices that you have to take. And that does, include money. And I will not trash, any Motel 6 or any Super 8 motel, but I don't, I want to make sure that, I have the proper security, quality, no bed bugs, whatever. And if they're listening, I'm sorry, but I've experienced it. Okay. On the way back from Cincinnati, days in, New Stanton, Mike Slavitt knows all about it. And Matt Ambrose and Angelo Maltese from Seton Hall. They know all about it. I don't want to discuss it now. But it's the money aspect. And it's almost $300 that it was per night. And we stayed there for, thankfully, it was just one night because we went back right after the game. But $300, it's $100. And for a college student, it's not that easy, and thankfully, we were able to do it. But what if you weren't? Are you going to, turn around and drive back the entire, the rest of the way? Because it's only a 4-hour drive. But, when you have hail pellets coming at you, it's like 6 hours, So you said it perfect. If you want to be on the grind, if you want to do all that, it's really unbelievable. But again, the Dunkin' Donuts Center, in my opinion, was probably the best building that I was at. And obviously also I don't want to gloat, but being at the game, calling the game against Duke, and also calling the game at Villanova just before watching the Eagles Super Bowl parade. Never forget that. But I know exactly how you feel at the Dunkin' Donuts Center. Really an amazing building. Were there, besides you not going with women's basketball, were there any other, I don't want to call them regrets, but wishes that you may have wanted to do during baseball season that you wish were able to be accomplished or come to fruition if this pandemic was non-existent?
That, that's tough to say with baseball. I think we were looking into becoming more official, if that makes sense. I mean, we had talks about if St. John's were to win a game, do a quick interview with a quote unquote player of the game or something like that. And I don't know if that's a regret or not because we never had the chance to do it. I mean, if you're speaking of regrets, I mean, obviously you talked about not traveling more with the women's basketball team, but I think my biggest regret is not going to Dayton last year for the first four when St. John's played Arizona State. I, I had a test in metaphysics that Wednesday night. I'm gonna say Wednesday night. Yeah, Wednesday night. Um, and I it was one of those professors who doesn't give makeup tests unless you're on your deathbed or something like that, or something bad happened in your family. And I had not performed well at all on the first test. So it wasn't a test that um, I could just miss. And he didn't drop the lowest grade or any of that. So I had to stay and take the test. And my plan was if St. John's won, I think they were going to advance to Tulsa.
Yes.
And I, I was planning if they had beaten Arizona State to travel to Tulsa to as they would play Buffalo or Texas Tech. One of them. I
Yeah, I
can't
think
remember the
yeah,
bracket off the top of my. It was
yeah.
either Buffalo or Texas Tech. I think Buffalo because that was the year last year. Buffalo was very good.
Yes, that's right.
Um, yeah, and if they won that game, then they would have played Texas Tech.
And it would have been
Um,
the Tariq Owens reunion game. Yes.
exactly. So obviously St. John's didn't win, so that's out the window because I was planning to do it. But I mean, two biggest regrets: just not traveling more with the women's team, not pushing to travel and do more of their road games, and then obviously not going to Dayton to do that first four NCAA tournament. Ended up being the only NCAA tournament St. John's made when I was at the school. They made it. They made it the year before I got there. One year I was there, and obviously, who who knows what would have happened this year because you're up on the number one seed without their best player in the quarterfinals, and yeah, it seemed like it had a favorable matchup if you were to win that game against either Butler or Providence, but who knows?
Yeah.
Bigger things were at stake than to what I wanted to do or a basketball game.
Well, I could tell you one thing, and I know, and I've known you for a few years as well, and I know deep down for the two of us, and with the heart that we have with, or the passion that we have for our occupation, for what we want to do. I know for me, and I'll be 100% honest, I did not understand the I didn't understand how big this was. A lot of people did not understand how big this pandemic was, where commencement would be canceled, where a basketball game would be canceled. And I remember, and I'll never forget, and I'll say this to the public too, is that I remember I got into a fight with my mom the night before. And she told me, she's like, just be careful, wear a mask, and I didn't, and truthfully, I brought the mask with me. And I remember I brought one, for both of us. And I didn't, and I think when we were leaving that day, I don't believe I wore it. And I think about it now when looking back on it here, April 9th, and it's not even a full month, which again, we spoke about this before. It's crazy. It's not even a full month. But 27 days ago, we were just outside of Penn Station when I forgot my camera bag, whatever. Yeah, I know. Ha ha ha. But all joking aside, we didn't know how big this was and how big it would get. And obviously that, basketball is our love. Being on the radio is our love. Being on TV is our love. Um it's it's wild that as much as we wanted the game with St. John's and Creighton to go on, and where St. John's could have made it to, which, I mean, let's be real, most likely if they would have won that game, I think an NIT bid would have been, at least an NIT bid would have been a lock.
I think an NIT bid might have already been a lock with the win over Georgetown.
Right, that's true, because they were, I think, 17-15, I believe, or 17-16.
Yeah, I think with any more wins in the Big East tournament, obviously, aside from a championship, they were trying to improve their seeding and potentially host some games.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, exactly. That would have been, humongous. But it's obviously bigger than basketball, and where St. John's, where this season would have ended up in, or where they ended up at. It was not a Cinderella season, but it was definitely a surprise season when they were projected to finish ninth. Yes, they did finish ninth in the Big East in standings, but really, again, 17 wins when you are a team with no expectations, you did something right, and this team is definitely for real moving forward. Uh, excuse me. Just to keep moving forward, Kevin, I want to ask you this, and this is something I remember I saw this on Twitter with you. Kevin Marfo, the graduate transfer from Quinnipiac, he made the decision. He had a Final Five, and one of the teams on his list was two of them rather, VCU and us, St. John's. He decided to go to Texas A&M and join Buzz Williams and his quote unquote culture. What do you make of that? Of him going to the Lone Star State?
Would have been a nice player for St. John's to have. Um, they didn't get him. That's how college basketball works. That's how recruiting works. They ended up getting a graduate transfer from George Washington. And I think it works because, I mean, obviously Marfa was the nation's leading rebounder this past year, but I still have Josh Roberts. I mean, Josh Roberts still coming back. Marcellus Arlington, who was a breakout star this year. Yeah, they're still going to be there. And they're gearing up for their final 2 years at St. John's. You throw in Greg Williams Jr. I mean, they all have the capabilities of being big time Big East players. I think Greg Williams is probably going to be preseason honorable mention or preseason second team All Big East, just with what he did. I mean, you could even make the case Marcellus Arlington should be named to one of those. If LJ Figueroa comes back, I think I don't know if he'll get consideration for preseason player of the year, but I think he should be on preseason first team.
And also don't forget Julian Champagny as well.
Exactly. I mean, you've had all these players who, again, had no expectations. I mean, and they really blew you away. Yeah, they had some growing pains, and they had to get used to playing with each other and so on and so forth. But St. John's, on paper, only loses a handful of players, assuming what LJ Figueroa does. I mean, obviously you had Damian Sears and Ian Steer transfer from the program, but the only two players that graduated were Nick Rutherford and Mustafa Heron. Right. And you have your two transfers. So if you get LJ Figueroa back, you're keeping your core. And that's what you need if you're Mike Anderson. He's building a program. He's building a core. And I think St. John's can make some serious noise in the Big East next year. Pending Figueroa comes back, I think.
Right. Well, that was the next thing that I was going to bring up is the state of the Big East for next year. UConn comes in, and next year with Big East Media Day, you're going to have people coming easily for UConn. They are making their return for the first time since 2013 to the Big East. And for most people I know, my cousin he's UConn alum, and he's been UConn fan since the Calhoun days. But he's like, oh, UConn's coming back, but not so fast. But then you also have to realize, also depends on Mac McClung too. Omer Yurtseven's gone. Marcus Howard is gone. Miles Powell is gone. Romaro Gill's gone. Then you also have Sakar Adam, Marquette. Marquette's going to take a big tumble. Najee Marshall's now gone. And a funny thing also, you also have who is it? I believe it's Jalen Coleman Lands from DePaul was granted a 6th year. I've never heard of that before. I mean, 6 years, my goodness. But DePaul, I mean, we don't know what's going to be. That could be when you come on my podcast, we could have a whole discussion with DePaul and Dave Lato's contract extension, but that's a discussion for another day. But moving on now to you, and now the Kevin Connelly without the St. John's logo and just Kevin Connelly from New Jersey. You're a Devils fan, and I want to hear your thoughts, first off, not only about the Devils, but this upcoming hockey season. Will we see it? Will your Devils be playing on the Prudential Center ice with the Stanley Cup Playoffs logo on it?
Oh, no. No. And I mean,
I'll interrupt you for a quick second.
That's because they're not good.
Well, but also there have been talks where all 31 teams could potentially be making the playoffs. So that's why. I mean, hey, listen, you could be having playoffs 2 out of the last 3 years.
Well, everything's fun to speculate about now. I mean, you look at what the MLB just proposed, NBA trying to do it in Vegas, NHL, I think, what, North Dakota.
Right.
It's a lot of speculation right now, and no one wants to be the first league that comes back and falls right flat on their face and has half a team test positive.
Right.
So there's a lot that goes into it. I think at first I thought NHL and NBA would go hand in hand. I think if one comes back, the other comes back. And I still think that might be true. But I think there's going to be a push for the NBA to come back and finish their season more than the NHL. And I think just in terms of money and popularity. And I'm just being honest. And then I think I would even slide Major League Baseball before the NHL too. I think if you're grouping those three sports together, it seems like the NHL would be the least likely to come back. And we'll see. I think all these different leagues are in their own, have their own different problems. But you can mostly compare the NBA and the NHL because they're 3/4 done with their season. And you have a lot of teams that have basically solidified playoff spots. But in the NBA, you have those 3 or 4 teams that are fighting for that last spot. And in the NHL, you have those 3 to 5 teams that are fighting for those last 2 spots. You can't just jump right into the playoffs because what if, I think the Islanders were out of the playoffs or the Rangers were out of the playoffs. What if they got hot and got in?
Right.
You
Well,
can't
right.
play that what if game.
And not only that, too, it's also the biggest thing where you have games in hand. And that's the part where I actually saw on Twitter, with me being an Islanders fan, I've seen, Columbus and Carolina are in the first and second wild card spot, respectively. And, the Islanders technically, they don't have the points, but they also did not play as many games. So, it's very, or it's the regulation overtime loss, or sorry, regulation overtime wins column. So it's very, very difficult situation, especially with money. And a lot of people, including Pierre LeBrun, one of the guys that I follow, he does not anticipate the season coming back. And really, I think it would be very odd to see an August playoff scenario, or even in July, where it would just be so hot, so humid, and especially where in potentially Vegas, where first off, the team is really good, but also to be able to upkeep the T-Mobile Arena, or even in Miami and Sunrise. It's so much more money. And would you be able to recoup all of that money that you put into a humongous dehumidifying system, or to pump AC into the building to keep everything cold? A lot of factors go in there. And like I said, I think that'll be pretty cool to see 31 teams, but then at the same time, I think about it, and it doesn't make sense the way that they proposed it. But we'll see what happens. My last question for you, Mr. Connelly, is this: who is your favorite broadcaster, and who do you idolize?
That's a tough one. There's a lot of really good ones out there. Love Jim Nance. I mean, he does it all. I mean, football, basketball, golf. Um, you look around at an Iron Eagle who does it all. I mean, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of color commentators, or even play-by-play. Gus Johnson. I mean, how can you not love Gus
Yeah,
Johnson?
of course.
I think Jim Nance is definitely up there. Yeah, I think Jim Nance is definitely up there for me.
And overall, to idolize, doesn't have to be a sports figure. Who would it be?
Hmm. I think I have to go with a sports figure, Mike
Okay.
Krzyzewski.
Okay. And
I
why?
think
And
I
why
mean,
is that?
just what he built, the adversity he went through. I mean, he served in the army. I mean, he's really done it all. I mean, go back, what, 30 years ish. People were calling for his head at Duke. They wanted him fired. And he knew what he was doing. He stuck to his guns. He kept going, and look at him now.
That's true. Yeah, no, absolutely. Mike Krzyzewski, one of the best college coaches in the entire NCAA, the best college coach, or one of the best college coaches ever. But really, it's surreal to have Kevin Connelly on the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series. Kevin, we cannot thank you enough. And again, I really do feel for you that the last game that you called on the St. John's University Radio Network was with me, but being the last game in Madison Square Garden and not during baseball slash softball season or potentially in Prasco Park in Cincinnati, Ohio, or even, at a super regional under new head coach Mike Hampton. And, now you're going to be graduating. Congratulations in advance. And again, I cannot thank you for having you on here.
Joey, thanks a lot. It was really fun. I could go on talking more college basketball for hours on end. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me, and stay safe and stay well.
Thank you, buddy. I really do appreciate it. We'll definitely have to get you on the Primetime Rundown podcast moving forward. But just before we go, we do want to say that episode number 3 of the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series will be taking place on Monday, April 13th at 6 p.m. when I welcome my old friend Rob DeLuca, the Marist hockey play-by-play man and also Montclair State public address announcer for men's hockey. Also, tomorrow night, Primetime Rundown episode number 21 kicks off as we welcome Anthony D'Oria from the Golden State Wiffle Ball League. And it's going to be a lot of fun. Tyler Adele will have that with us starting at 6 p.m. tomorrow night right here on the Eastern Observer. Once again, for Kevin Connelly, I'm Joey Jarzynka saying good night from Long Island and from New Jersey. And for all of those out there suffering in the sports world, please log on to theeasternobserver.com for all information on sports moving forward. Thank you all again for tuning in, and have a great night.